Perhaps you never thought of our profession's foundation in this way before, but unlocking the learning potential of students, teachers, and consumers through education is the core of the Foundation's mission. The Foundation believes that education is the key to unlocking learning potential, and this is demonstrated through the programs they create, disseminate, and support. Their math and financial literacy programs are the keys that help individuals to minimize risk through maximizing education. We should all be very proud of the life-changing impacts the Foundation has made in educating students and consumers on behalf of our profession. These impacts would not have been possible without the generous support of our donors and corporate sponsors. Many of us here today are wearing donor ribbons in recognition of this support. If you have given to the Foundation in the past, I thank you. If you have yet to give to the Actuarial Foundation, there isn't a better time than now. A first-time gift of $50 or more will be matched through their Matching Gift Challenge. Your ideas, volunteerism, and donations increase the momentum and further the reach of the Foundation programs benefiting communities in which we work and live. I encourage you to visit the Foundation booth, speak with Foundation staff, and I hope you will add a donation ribbon to your badge. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now the address of the 63rd President of the Society of Actuaries, Brad Smith.
Last year at this meeting, I identified a number of specific areas in which I believe the actuarial profession should focus. Let's take a brief look at each of these 1 year later. I emphasized the importance of good communication skills, particularly the ability to effectively communicate with non-actuaries. That being labeled too actuarial is not a compliment, but rather a criticism leveled at an actuary who is incapable of articulating the problem he is trying to solve and the solution he proposes. We are to meet our potential as individuals and as a profession. We must be capable of clear communication. Tanya Manning, our incoming president, intends this to be a continuing focus of her term in office. I identified 4 specific societal problems with actuarial implications: public pension plan underfunding, healthcare reform, Medicare reform, and Social Security reform. I called for a grassroots effort, and I am happy to report that many of you responded enthusiastically. The social insurance section of the SOA has been very active in addressing some of these issues. Likewise, the board has become increasingly active in examining the issues surrounding the funding of public pension plans, the role actuaries have played, and the reputation risk that this presents to the profession. There is no doubt that these issues are on the national radar screen and that there is an increasing awareness by policymakers of the important role that actuaries have to play. Involvement by actuaries will be an evolving process. Our challenge will be to maintain the momentum and increase actuarial influence in the policymaking process. My fellowship in the Society of Actuaries is my most valuable professional and economic asset. It is the asset from which all other financial and professional assets emanate. I'm sure that upon reflection, many, if not all of you, would agree it is your most valuable professional and economic asset also. We've all paid a high price for obtaining and maintaining our SOA-issued credentials. Consequently, the primary responsibility of SOA leadership and staff has to be to protect and enhance the value of SOA credentials. Earlier this year, the board of the SOA approved the development of a general insurance, casualty insurance, education, and examination track. This track will be designed to provide the basic education necessary to perform the attestation function and issue statements of actuarial opinion in the general insurance, casualty insurance specialty. The question I hear from many SOA members is, that's great, but why should I care? An underappreciated aspect of globalization is the mass migration of rural poor to urban middle class now underway in developing nations. I would maintain that developing nations is a misnomer, as these countries are nearly fully developed in their urban areas. They're considered developing primarily because of the substantial, albeit diminishing, proportion of their population that remains rural poor. What do newly middle-class individuals do? They buy things: cars, homes, furniture, and insurance to protect them from the loss of these assets. Eventually, they'll buy life insurance, disability insurance, and provide for their retirement, but initially they buy property and casualty insurance. That is why general insurance is the fastest growing area of insurance in these developing countries, and there's an increased demand for actuaries trained in property and casualty insurance principles. Over the past 5 years, as part of my commercial responsibilities as chairman of Milliman and as a presidential officer of the Society of Actuaries, I have traveled extensively around the world. I've met with CEOs of insurance companies and government officials responsible for the development and regulation of their insurance industry. I've traveled to China multiple times. China has been and continues to be transformed by the migration of its rural poor to urban middle class. Each time I go to Beijing or Shanghai, I am amazed at the growth since my last visit 6 to 12 months earlier. The traffic in Beijing is horrendous, primarily because they can't build roads fast enough to absorb the increased number of cars. The Chinese auto insurance industry has been permanently damaged by ignorant competitors that have underpriced and under-reserved their products. Because of the fantastic growth in the business, they have been able to mask, willingly or unwillingly, their lack of profitability. This creates a dilemma for the educated companies. Should they charge a fundamentally sound premium and risk losing market share, or should they meet their uneducated competitor's price and hope the competitor goes out of business before they do? This situation was allowed to occur because there was a significant domestic actuarial profession. There was no significant domestic actuarial profession supported by a strong regulatory regime that required companies to hold adequate reserves. It represented a significant setback and a permanent loss of capital for the Chinese insurance industry. Similar circumstances exist in developing countries around the world. As part of my commercial responsibilities, I met with the Minister of Finance responsible for the regulation of insurance and banking in Saudi Arabia. I invited Greg Heydrich, Executive Director of the SOA, and Ken Guthrie, Managing Director of Education for the SOA, to sit in on the meeting. The insurance industry in Saudi Arabia is growing very quickly. It's currently dominated by casualty and health carriers. There's currently only one qualified actuary in the kingdom, along with one student. What was supposed to be a 30-minute courtesy visit turned into a 90-minute plus substantive discussion on how best to develop the actuarial profession in the kingdom. If the SOA is to continue to be the premier professional organization in the world, it must provide education, research, and credentialing in all actuarial disciplines. This need was a primary reason for my invitation to all U.S.-based actuarial organizations, including the Casualty Actuarial Society, to seriously consider consolidation. Unfortunately, the CAS quickly rejected our invitation 3 times, very publicly, despite being asked only once. Given their emphatic rejection, the SOA had to develop this capability organically and has begun to do so. It is committed to developing a curriculum and offering its first general insurance casualty exam in the fall of 2013. Are there risks in making this commitment? Of course. We had to find individuals with the appropriate expertise who are willing to help us develop the curriculum. Fortunately, many extremely qualified individuals, including actuarial professors and experienced professionals from around the world, have stepped up to this challenge. They want to be on the ground floor of what they believe will be the premier platform for the education and examination of general insurance, casualty insurance actuaries in the world. Recently, the SOA has hired 2 staff fellows to help lead this effort. Scott Lennox and Anthony Capoletti are both fellows of the CAS and the Canadian Institute of Actuaries with nearly 25 years of experience. Scott's also an ASA, and his background includes both general insurance and life insurance pricing. He's also been a University of Waterloo instructor and contributor to 2 general insurance textbooks. Even before joining the SOA staff, Scott has been a member of the General Insurance Curriculum Committee. Anthony's background has been with both consulting firms and carriers. Job 1 for both Scott and Anthony is the design and development, implementation, and management of the general insurance track. In time, they'll also work on professional development offerings for SOA members. With Scott and Anthony joining the education staff and with the leadership of excellent volunteers, we are very well positioned to develop a top-notch general insurance product. Will students pursue general insurance casualty credential issued by the SOA? Time will tell, but so far, based upon our many visits to colleges and universities with actuarial programs, the enthusiasm for such a credential is substantial. By supporting the basic qualification standards for all actuarial disciplines, the SOA will provide more time for the new candidate to choose his or her area of specialization, as well as providing mid-career actuarial professionals, including virtually all SOA members, with more options. Additionally, the possibility of offering double majors will be appealing to some of our candidates, particularly those practicing in areas outside North America where the lines drawn between the actuarial disciplines are not as bright as they are here. Interestingly, the SOA got an early indication of the interest our candidates are likely to have in our general insurance efforts. In our first ever offering of our new ERM exam this fall, candidates had to select a case study worth 1/4 of the entire exam. Case studies were offered covering all the actuarial specialty tracks offered by the SOA, including general insurance case study. With no advertising or other special promotion, 20 candidates chose the general insurance case study, actually more than chose the group health case study. Of these, seven were from outside the U.S., from countries including China, Canada, Bahrain, Switzerland, and Jamaica. They work for a variety of employers, including the largest domestic property, casualty, and reinsurance companies in China and major actuarial consulting firms. While this is only a very preliminary indicator, I think it demonstrates clearly that our members, most of these individuals are ASAs, are interested in general insurance and have strong professional reasons to pursue general insurance training. It also clearly indicates the potential international reach of this program. Will regulatory bodies in the United States, Canada, and around the globe recognize such a credential as being sufficient in the education of general insurance actuaries? We've begun discussions with the NAIC, the Academy, and the Canadian Institute of Actuaries, and we are committed to meet and exceed the requirements they impose. All have promised us a balanced and thorough review of our plans, just as we would expect, and a level playing field in their consideration of our approach. Will this program impose a financial drain on the SOA? It will certainly require an initial investment. However, we are confident that if we produce a product for general insurance equal to the quality of that produced for our other disciplines, the finances will take care of themselves. There are certainly risks in pursuing such an initiative. However, the board felt strongly that not doing so represented a much bigger risk to the real and perceived value of our credentials and to their ongoing relevance in the rapidly globalizing market where we all compete. It is insightful to consider the top 10 SOA exam centers in the world. And no, this is not a David Letterman top 10 list, but I think you'll be surprised. Only 3 are in the United States: New York, Chicago, and Hartford. No surprises there. 2 are in Canada: Montreal and Toronto. The remaining 5 are surprising, or at least were surprising to me: Beijing, Hong Kong, Taipei, Seoul, and Kuala Lumpur. Let me repeat that. 5 of the SOA's top 10 examination centers in the world are Beijing, Hong Kong, Taipei, Seoul, and Kuala Lumpur. Approximately 70% of our members live in the United States today and about 18% in Canada. Only about 56% of our candidates live in the United States and about 11 to 12% in Canada. Clearly, a seismic demographic shift in our membership is underway, just as it is in the global economy today. The Society of Actuaries is not only a professional society that serves all of us, it's also a business that has to grow and satisfy its clients, including all of us as members, our candidates, and actuarial employers. It has approximately $45 million of revenue every year. It has competitors. It has a strategic plan. In September of 2011, Don Siegel, then president of the SOA, Greg Heydrich, and I visited the leaders of the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries in London. They acknowledged that while we work very closely together to promote the actuarial profession globally, our two organizations also will compete fiercely for new candidates and members over the next 10 years in developing markets around the world. While acknowledging that the SOA has a head start in some markets in the Asia Pacific, they also indicated that they had one advantage over us that they thought they could exploit. Specifically, they felt our lack of general insurance capability left us vulnerable, again in developing markets such as the Asia Pacific. Interestingly, they also acknowledged that they could not alone provide the infrastructure necessary to develop the actuarial profession globally. The SOA and Institute and faculty both had to contribute to this effort. After thinking about this, I think they were, in a very subtle way, encouraging us to expand our capabilities to include general insurance. The SOA has approximately 23,000 members around the world. Approximately 3,000 SOA members reside outside North America. By contrast, our friends in the Casualty Actuarial Society have about 6,000 members, with 300 of those members residing outside the United States, Canada, and Bermuda. The CAS has done an excellent job historically educating actuaries practicing in North America. However, it simply does not have the infrastructure in place to educate actuaries worldwide. It takes scale and significant infrastructure to serve the growing need for general insurance actuaries in developing markets around the world, and only the SOA and the Institute and faculty have the scale and infrastructure. By filling this void, we are meeting our responsibility to develop a strong actuarial profession globally. While we were unable to convince the leaders of other US-based actuarial organizations of the benefits of consolidation, I think we will be more successful convincing individual actuaries of the benefits offered by the SOA. Simply stated, we must make our move into general insurance a win for all actuaries, including CAS members. This past weekend, the SOA board has instructed its Issues and Advisory Council to study the possibility of granting equivalent membership in the SOA to members of the CAS. If adopted, FCASs and ACASs who applied during a temporary window of time, say 2 or 3 years, could become FSAs and ASAs. The IAC has been asked to study the implications of such a policy and report back to the board at its March board meeting. In my opinion, this would represent a significant step forward and a win for all actuarial professionals, as well as the actuarial profession. It is imperative that the SOA offer all disciplines of actuarial science in its educational offerings if it was to remain the premier actuarial organization in the world. Doing so helps ensure that the professional asset each of you has worked so hard to obtain, your SOA-issued credential, will continue to produce the returns for you that it has historically. Let's move on to another topic. I want to address some of the issues concerning the current nomination and election process. As many of you probably know, we faced a bit of controversy about this process this year. The primary issue is whether the SOA should place only individuals who have been vetted through our nominating committee on the ballot as candidates for president-elect, vice president, and elected board member. As I mentioned a moment ago, the SOA is not only a professional society of members, it is also a business. Its operations are overseen by its board of directors consisting of 28 individuals elected by the membership and led by its presidential officers. Although not an exact comparison, I relate this to my commercial experience at Milliman, where we've learned the value of vetting in a different way. In the early 2000s, trial attorneys, discovered actuaries, and actuarial malpractice claims for everyone increased precipitously. At Milliman, we did an analysis of claims filed against us. Thankfully, while not subject to the law of large numbers, one correlation stood out. The vast majority of claims filed against us were not caused by faulty work we did as actuaries, but rather by poor client selection on the front end of our engagements. Simply put, if we didn't vet our clients properly, we could not we could expect more of our engagements to turn out badly. Consequently, we implemented a client screening system. By asking a few simple questions, we were able to decline potential clients who greatly increased our risk of problems in litigation. Did the client have a history of filing claims against its professional service providers? Did the client or its officers have a history of bankrupting companies? Was the client looking for a specific answer to the question they asked us? Specifically, did they want us to lower their reserves? Did the client have a history of firing its attesting actuary? Did the officers of the company have criminal records? Most of our potential clients flew through this screening process. This caused some of our consultants to question the efficacy of the program. However, every year we identified a couple potential clients who, absent the screening system, would have been accepted and most likely resulted in litigation. A classic low probability, high severity result was greatly reduced or eliminated. I know of no enterprise the size of the SOA that does not vet its senior leaders, or even those who may not be in senior positions, but who still handle sensitive transactions or information and financial assets. The risk of not doing so are simply too great. Not knowing the knowable is irresponsible, particularly in this age when information is easily accessible. Do we want leaders who cannot keep confidential information confidential? Do we want leaders who have a history of ABCD violations? Do we want leaders who have a history of filing baseless ABCD claims against others? Do we want leaders who have demonstrated an inability to work with others they disagree with in a constructive manner, developing solutions palatable to all? Do we want leaders who have proven to be ineffective board members serving in more senior positions? Do we want leaders who do not treat others with a sense of civility and respect? In this day of risk management, do we want leaders who have a criminal past? This is the purpose and the function of the nominating committee. Its purpose is not to screen out candidates who hold views that differ from their personal views, and nominating committee members have not done so. The value of the committee is in vetting nominees to find and place on the ballot those best qualified to lead the SOA, protecting your most valuable professional and economic asset. I'm convinced that our members appreciate this vetting process. Having said this, I recognize the potential problems with such a system. Is it susceptible to manipulation or the perception of manipulation by its leaders? Yes, it is. I can tell you unequivocally that during my involvement over the last 2 years, this has not been the case. Most of the members of the nominating committee, many of whom I do not know and had not met previously, were in place when I took office. Nonetheless, I understand the perception issues held by some of our members. We have surveyed our member panel, a group of approximately 600 randomly chosen members of the Society of Actuaries, representative of the membership as a whole. Results of that survey confirm that a substantial segment of our membership, 65 to 70% in fact, values the vetting process. However, many would prefer to also have a pathway to the ballot through a petition process. If you're interested, you can check out the survey results on the SOA website under leadership/elections. Quite frankly, given the other issues the actuarial profession and the SOA face, we cannot afford to divert the time, manpower, and resources we have expended over the past 3 years to continue to debate this issue. That is why this past weekend I asked the board to consider changing our system in a way that will maintain the vetting process while allowing a candidate not chosen by the nominating committee to appear on the ballot for vice president or for president-elect, vice president, and elected board member via a petition process. The board agreed that it's time to put this issue behind us and adopted such a policy so we can get on with the important work of our stakeholders want and expect us to perform. Let's continually find ways to enhance the value of the SOA credentials, paying higher and higher dividends on the investment you have made and continue to make to be a successful actuarial professional. The projects undertaken this year were not solely initiated by me, and their progress won't end with my tenure as president. As a past president, I'll remain a member of the leadership team and the board for 2 more years and will continue pushing to make the tough strategic decisions to benefit the actuarial profession and the Society of Actuaries. Being president of the Society of Actuaries has been one of the great privileges of my professional life. I want to thank all of the professionals at Milliman for allowing me to take on this additional responsibility. I want to thank all of the members of the SOA board. What we have accomplished together this year will set the course for the success we will enjoy together for the years to come. I want to thank the members of the Society of Actuaries for your suggestions and support throughout my year as your president. Do good, do well, good luck, and thank you very much.